So welcome everyone to Cosmic Cultivation, Ayurvedic Astrology for this transformative time. This is a collaboration between Cultivate Balance. It's an Ayurvedic practice between myself, Molly McConnell, and my co-practitioner, Sierra Bashir. And we are collaborating here with David McConaghay of Multidimensional Medicine. And these are conversations that we've been bringing to our shared communities basically every month around this time, around the full moon, to talk a little bit about the astrology of this transformative time and really how it relates to us so that we can figure out sort of what to do in all of this and to understand, our purpose and our connection to the bigger picture a little more clearly. So I'm going to pass it over to David in just a moment to get us started. But before I do, let me tell you a little bit about David McConaghay. So in addition to being just an incredible friend of mine, he's also an Ayurvedic doctor. He's a Vedic astrologer. He's an ordained minister and master of metaphysics. As part of his pursuit of a doctorate in divinity, he is currently composing a thesis paper about the periodic table of Ayurvedic elements. Wow. And he's practicing what he calls multidimensional medicine. David offers individual consultations, personal and professional mentorship, and a variety of public classes as well, including this one. So do keep in touch with him. David, your website is Vedadave or Ayurveda Dave?
Vedadave.com.
Vedadave.com to learn more about how you can connect with him, and you can find me at cultivatebalance.com. And I am going to pass it off to my pal, Vedadave.
Great. Fabulous. Wonderful. Thank you, Molly. Wonderful to be here as always, and nice to see some familiar faces joining us. Yeah, it sure is an adventurous time to be alive on the planet, isn't it? There's so much going on that it's like, I have to laugh to keep from crying sometimes, and it's just the overwhelm, the intensity, whether it's politics or COVID or economics or just like the energetic, emotional atmosphere of what it feels like to be a human on the planet right now is really elevated in my experience. And just from those of you with whom I'm in touch, that seems to be a shared sensation. And so the goal of these sessions is first and foremost to be interactive opportunities just to get together and open a space to talk about archetypes, energetics, the 5 elements, Ayurveda, Vedic astrology, and just this sort of safe space to ask big questions and posit possibilities and share some of the wisdom of the Vedic tradition, because in these transformative moments in history, it is very helpful to look back at what has been true for thousands of years, right? When the 24-hour news cycle is distorting, and we don't know, it's hard to know what sources are trustworthy, what information is valid, all of that. It is really, really helpful for me personally, at least, and this is sort of the genesis of this, is to zoom all the way out and see, okay, what can we say very clearly is true, and what are these stories that are true outside of time, in all time and space. And so this is where Ayurveda and Vedic astrology become really, really stabilizing reference points, so that no matter who's ahead in the polls or what nonsense is going on out in the world, we can just watch the rising, falling transformation of the 5 great elements and the 3 gunas, which we can get into right now.
And to really be able to, amidst witnessing all of that, to be able to come back to our own center, to understand your nature, the elements within you, and to know who you are and not get lost in all of it. There's so much. So
yeah, fully. Ultimately, it is a invitation for reflection and the cultivation of self-knowledge. That's ultimately the, that capital S self knowledge, to bring it home and find your center, and it's from that center that we can make confident movements into this strange and dangerous world that surrounds us. So let's see.
and I should also mention, if you have questions throughout, you can type them in, you could unmute, wave us down, and David especially would be really excited to answer those for you.
I love answering questions, because here's the thing. I will just talk for the next 75 minutes, right? I will start and not stop. And that's fine. But mostly, like, again, this is not, I don't know. It's for you, right? And we want this to be interactive, and
For all of
the
us.
information, it's for everyone. We want the information to be relevant. And so, okay. So last time we met, we talked about the 3 gunas and the 5 elements. So I want to take a moment to review the 3 gunas here. And because these 3 words, sattva, rajas, tamas, are of absolutely vital importance to all things Ayurveda, all things Jyotish, which is the Sanskrit word for Vedic astrology, and really for all things yoga as well. And these 3 gunas, that word guna, let's see, I've got this cool pen now, so I can write things. Guna means quality or attribute. So when we're trying to describe anything that we can experience through our senses, we can say we can use these 3 words to describe its qualities. Like, how would you describe this a person's behavior? Well, we can generally categorize it as sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic. And so I want to start with rajas here. Rajas is really the mind and the senses, and it's everything on the sort of horizontal plane of life. It's sort of our activities, our desires, our personality self. It's sort of like this action, outgoing and out in the world. And I want food that tastes good, and to talk to interesting people and ask questions. And it's just sort of like all this activity. When I wake up in the morning and drink some coffee, it's like, yeah, in circles on the horizontal plane is how life goes, right? Because ultimately, like, every time we eat, oh, that's delicious, and then we're ready for the next bite, and we finish eating, and then 3 hours later, oh, I'm ready for more food. And it's just sort of this endless cycle if we get caught in rajas. And so a lot of life is this balancing act between rajas and tamas, right? Tamas is, let's do a better underline. There we go. Tamas has this downward moving energy. It's heaviness, density, stillness, and really has to do with our root system. And so we can see how, and okay, yeah, is the body, is this basic intelligence of the body that at a certain point, you spin around in a rajas cycle for long enough, and eventually the body's like, okay, I'm done. Let's take a nap. Let's go to bed. And so tamas is the heaviness of sleep. the stillness of, you know, if you think of the root system of a tree, the roots are down in all the nourishment comes from. That's where all of the, you know, the juices are flowing, soaking up all the nutrients that the plant needs to grow. But under there, it's dark and quiet, and it seems like nothing's happening. So that's tamas, and it's sort of this very embodied quality. Tamas is yeah, the intelligence of the physical body, and has to do with a certain like specificity, right? Soul down here has to do with your unique expression on this planet, like where you were planted as a divine being. Whereas spirit is this sort of up and outward going motion, where spirit is this idea, oh, we're all one. Every, you know, sure, we're individuals. That's sort of our soul expression. But oh, we're all one. We sort of expand up into spirit, that all inclusive sort of concept. And this word sattva literally translates to beingness, and has the qualities of sort of peace and clarity, and this compassion that comes with the awareness that we are all one, that we are all interconnected, that we all come from the same source, and that source is flowing through us as individuals. And so sattva can be said to be the sort of ideal outcome for all spiritual practices. All spiritual practitioners are seeking to cultivate sattva, whether they call it that or not. But when you think of this sort of meditative state, where even like after meditation and you get up and you're doing the dishes very peacefully and calmly, like this has the quality of sattva. And so of course, like rajas and tamas, okay, let's say this, all three qualities, all three gunas are embedded into all existence. Every single thing, every single action, every single observable phenomena has all three gunas encoded into it. It's likely that it has a certain proportion that you know, where one of them predominates, but all three have to be there. And so one of the questions that I would pause to ask is, based on what I've just described, seems to dominate your life, and to really think, and for me it's rajas. I am a super rajasic being, and I do my best to infuse it with sattva, but I have this like very sort of like energetic, sometimes frantic, sometimes manic kind of quality, where I talk fast and loud, and I'm busy all the time. And
Hey David, you're cutting out just a little bit, and we heard
I'm cutting out, am I?
Yeah, I heard part of your question, and I think it's sort of implied, but I'd love for you to just restate it again.
Yeah. So the question is, which of the gunas is most prominent in your own experience of life? And I was just saying how for me it's rajas. Like I'm super rajasic, and I, you know, demonstrate that with the, you know, speed of my speech, how loud and busy I move my hands like this, you know, that sort of thing. So does anybody want to jump in? Molly, what
You know, for me, it's probably tamas, and I think I used to have sort of a negative.
I feel like you're.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think I used to have sort of a negative connotation of tamas as being like lazy, sort of like the negative connotations of kappadosha. But when you described it as like the roots of the tree and the intelligence of physical body, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
actually that really resonates with me. And I do resonate with stillness and embodiment and density even in my physical body. So I'm like, yeah, honestly, maybe it's sort of cool to relate to Thomas.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and Thomas does get pinned as like the bad one, right? And Sattva's the good one, and Thomas is the bad one, and it's just all three are required for existence to exist. And I would argue that there's light and shadow aspects of all three, right? I think last time we tried to talk about the shadow aspects of Sattva, which is a little bit tricky. For me, the shadow aspect of Sattva is in the realm of like spiritual bypassing, where we refuse to be embodied. We refuse to fully live in what is ultimately discomfort. Like being embodied is, it can be joyful, incredible pleasure and stimulation, but it's also pain and illness and, you know, all this sort of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody who's just purely sattva is this sort of aloof, abstract, never really present, and fully embodied. That's the shadow side of sattva. And I would invite, I don't know, I'm sure there are yogis out there who would disagree that that's even a possibility, but this is my stance on that.
Yeah.
So I wonder if anybody else has a sense of themselves. And I guess one thing I'll say is, Molly, you strike me as mostly quite sattvic, and sattva and tamas can be easily mistaken for one another, right? Where you know, if you are meditating, you could be meditating like sleeping, or you could be meditating in this very peaceful state, and those are sometimes hard to differentiate. And so that stillness, that stability, and again, really one of the ways to think about this is life is this dance between rajas and tamas, right? Okay, I'm tired at night, tamas, I want to go to sleep. Okay, I'm awake in the morning, rajas, I get going, cup of coffee, okay, now I need a nap, and this sort of back and forth of rajas and tamas. And we want to infuse as much sattva. So we have sattvic rajas and sattvic tamas in everything we do. But
and it makes so much more sense to like embody multiple things than it ever does to just embody one. I think it's like a funny thing about human language that we're always trying to define people and say, well, you're that way and you're only that. And I think it's a lot more dynamic to say, yeah, sattva rajas, like you have both, and to try and say that you're only one or that you're mostly one is a less interesting conversation, I think.
Yeah, fully. So I guess we can edit the question a little bit to just ask like,
I mean, I think it's worth
there's one that
identifying.
is generally predominant,
Yeah.
or maybe there's like a recent event. Okay, Graham says definitely Rajasic over here. Linking it to being a Libra. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that right now. Okay, yeah, and so feeling more sattva coming into his life recently, and that awareness that we're all connected takes the edge off. Yeah. Yeah, and that is the beauty of sattva, and we need that sort of like, okay, we're all one, it's all interconnected. I am part of the whole, right? I am this unique part, but connected to the whole, and that allows for this faith, this shraddha, this trust in the natural flow of, you know, let go and let God, because, you know, it's outside my control, part of this larger being. And it's like, it's that expanded sense of connection that for me helps me to then be more fully embodied, be like, okay, with that awareness, I then have the courage and resilience to be in this individual body and sit through the discomfort of whatever it is that is happening. And I keep saying that. I guess it's because life is not super comfortable right now. Just, you know, the whole like it's really easy to I am noticing myself a strong desire for distraction, and trying to, you know, think about anything, thinking about the like state of the planet constantly. I've been trying to, but I can't do it. So here we are. Thank you, Graham. Thank you for sharing that. Sandra Lee, you want to jump in there, or shall we move on?
I think where you were saying with the Sattva Rajas or Sattva Tamas, it reminds me of comparing it to the doshas, where you're hardly ever just Pitta, or you're hardly ever just Vata, or just Kapha. You're, you know, Pitta Vata or Vata Pitta or Kapha Pitta. So that helps me clarify it a little bit.
Yeah.
And even just acknowledging that it changes, like whether or not you're Sattva Rajas sort of at the same time, or it's the energy of movement, that maybe you're Rajas for most of your life, but there is a potential for something else at a different time. And I sort of love that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Molly, as you were saying before, sort of acknowledging the complexity of it. Mm-hmm. Where, you know, to categorize everything in all existence into 3 silos is inherently simplistic, and so this division happens relatively high. Chart. So this comes from Samkhya philosophy, all pervasive creator, and filters down into the infinite variety of embodied beings that we experience as life, from planets to plants to people. So the Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas is this sort of fulcrum point where we've gone from the very, very subtle, energetic, abstract realm, and once we get to Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, there's this explosion of life and created beings. And I see Sandra. Okay, yeah, Sattva Rajas. That sounds about right. Okay, so what I want to look at now is this chart, which we spent a little bit of time with in the last section, but there's so much information here, and this is the typical arrangement of a Vedic astrology chart in the South Indian style. There's a North Indian and a South Indian style, and this is a representation of the South Indian style. And of course, here we are on Earth, and we have a ring of stars around us and the planets that move through those constellations. And you can see here we've got, so, you know, here's Aries up here, right? And Aries and Taurus and Gemini, and so these are the ring of stars that encircles us. And from our perspective, you know, so right now, Mars is right here, and the moon is up here as well, and the sun is down here. And so from our perspective on Earth, we look towards the stars of Aries right now, and we see Mars and the moon over there. And we look towards Virgo, and that's where the sun is. And so this is how we organize. This is our map of space. So one of the way, okay, and just to link what we just came from, each of the signs is assigned one of the gunas and has the qualities of that guna as one of its defining features. So this immediately gives us a whole bunch of information about the different signs. and helps us to make accurate descriptions of when, you know, a planet is in a certain place, or somebody says, oh, I'm Libra rising. What does that mean? Well, there's a certain Rajasic quality to that, right? And so the way, the sort of the presentation that I want to offer today is a way of mapping the zodiac according to paired opposites. For me, this is one of the simplest ways to memorize all of the signs and some of the qualities about each sign. And for me, it's one of the most accessible sources of information that sort of gives clues as to, like, what do we actually do about any of this, where it's like, well, I'm a Leo, and so I need to be center stage all the time, and that's just the way I am, right? And I was like, well, okay, that's one way of looking at it. And I always pick on the Leos because they can handle it. But the point of astrology is not fatalism, right? It's not like, oh, well, this is my chart and this is just the way I am. No, the whole point is is as a method of self-reflection, a vehicle for self-awareness, that would be like, oh, I have these tendencies to, you know, want to be center stage and be the prime focus. And sometimes that, you know, rubs people the wrong way, or I end up doing selfish things that I don't really mean to do, but that's just what's happening. So, okay, how can I make a skillful adjustment that will help me use those leadership qualities in a good way, right? And so let's go through. Oh, my video turned off. Come back. How do we want to do this first? Okay, we're gonna take a slight detour here, and because before we talk about the signs as being paired, we're gonna talk about the planets as being paired. And so this is one of my favorite diagrams that I've ever made. And what you can see here is, you know, this is the astrology chart we were just looking at. We're here on Earth in the middle, but we rotated it 90 degrees this way, right? So it's just been turned on its head. And this is how we can see sort of the cosmic body represented. The Sahasrara chakra is beyond embodiment, doesn't have a sign. Sandra is asking how you know your sign, and we'll talk about that in our appointment next week. Sorry to not have prepared you properly for this, but you'll learn more about that this coming week. So the sun and the moon represent the archetypal masculine and feminine. The sun is the masculine principle, the moon is the feminine principle. And the sun and moon are unique in the zodiac as they each only rule one sign, right? Being each of the other planets, let's take Mercury, for example. Mercury rules both Virgo Gemini. And so there's a masculine expression and a rules two signs with their sort of masculine and feminine expression, whereas there's nothing masculine about the moon and there's nothing feminine about the sun. So Leo is the masculine principle, the archetypal father or king, and the moon is the and in Cancer, as the ruler of Cancer, is the feminine principle, the archetypal mother or queen. And so they together rule sort of this Ajna Chakra, the head of the chart. And what we're going to talk about is these paired opposites. So Leo finds Aquarius as its opposite, and Cancer finds Capricorn as its opposite. And we can see that both of these signs are ruled by Saturn. So we got the sun and the moon sort of as one unit, masculine, feminine together, mother, father as one unit, parents, right? And opposite them is Saturn. And so there's this push-pull dynamic. And the image for this that came to mind as I was just thinking about this is that if we think of figure skating, and the sun and the moon are like, couples figure skating, and beautiful dance, and they come close together and they spread apart and they're both twirling and swirling and just sort of separating, and it's this beautiful metaphor creation, right? We need a mom and a dad to have a little baby, right? And so and the earth is that baby here in the middle. So this is this dance of creation. So mom and dad, king and queen, sort of doing this dance, and it's beautiful, and they're swirling around. And then Saturn is the judge. Saturn is sitting on the side of the rink, watching them very carefully, looking for any mistake that they're making, and deducting points, and keeping track of, in this, for the sun and moon, they're just dancing. They're just, sort of spontaneous expression of love and beauty and creative energy. And Saturn's like, well, did they get their double axle in? Okay, well, they need to do a spin piece, and there's a dance aspect to it, and what are the technical aspects? And Saturn's sort of keeping track of all that, them on it. Role is the cosmic judge in a lot of ways, and who meets out our karma and wants us to do the best we can, wants us to score as many points as possible in terms of resolving our karmic baggage, but is keeping close track and putting pressure on us, right? It's one thing just to go out in the rink and practice and it's sort of consequence free, but when you're out there and the judge is watching and deducting points and keeping track, there's this pressure, and Saturn puts a lot of pressure on us, and people get stressed out before the performance, and they're worried what the judge is going to think, and worried about, oh, I don't know if we're going to do it right, and so that's some of the energy that Saturn brings. The other important thing to note is that, okay, so the sun is at the center of the solar system, and then the moon is the closest being, the closest cosmic being to the earth, right? And these are the two luminaries, the two most intimate. Let me start again. Saturn is the last planet that we can see with the naked eye. Saturn represents sort of the outer limit of the naked eye, and it is the most distant planet that we can. And so really, like, the sun and moon are sort of at the center, and Saturn is all the way on the outside edge, sort of doing this big circle and circling. And again, there's that sense of pressure where, like, okay, so the sun is at the center and everything sort of expands out from there, right? Everything's orbiting the sun and is that gravitational center. And so there's all, and the sun is radiating energy out, and all of the life and warmth and light on the planet comes from the sun. And so there's this outward moving radiance. And then Saturn is sort of this the furthest out container holding it all in. So it's creating this inward moving pressure. So this is this dance between we've got the sun and the moon as the parents, and then Saturn on the opposite end. So this is this paired opposite, and we'll go into more detail about each sign in a moment. Pausing for questions. Is that making sense? Great. Just if somehow or is confusing, please interrupt. Okay, our next pair is Mercury and Jupiter. Mercury, Jupiter. And so we've got, our pairs are Virgo and Pisces, Gemini and Sagittarius, and we'll go into detail about those in a moment. This pair is really the conversation between the head and the heart. Mercury is the intellect and rules information and sort of data. Jupiter is more wisdom and intelligence. Intelligence versus information, right? You see the distinction between those two, and Jupiter has to do with religion and spirituality and sort of traditional knowledge and this sense of what is the capital T truth, right? This is Jupiter's domain. And Mercury is the intellect and is curious and isn't making any it just wants all the information. Again, doesn't even true or not, right? Just let me collect all the information that's out there and we'll sort through it later. Gemini loves details and asking further questions and organization and the sort of fine tuning and all the specifics. Jupiter has this more expansive concept, is this more all-inclusive. It's like, okay, what truth can contain all the information that we can find? So no matter how much information that Mercury collects, Jupiter can contain it all within that capital T truth. And I mean, Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. All of the other planets can fit inside Jupiter with room to spare. And whereas Mercury is this quick little thing closest to the sun, zipping around, making laps really, really quickly, just sort of scooping up all the information it can get. So that's this pair, Jupiter, Mercury, the heart and the head, the intellect versus the wisdom. Okay, does that make sense? That's our second pair. And then our third pair, and you can see how quickly we're moving through the whole zodiac here, right? And so this one of the reasons I wanted to offer the information in this way is because I remember when I first started studying signs felt overwhelming. The idea of memorizing the order in which the 12 signs are organized felt like too much. It was like so much data, right? So Graham, your question, do they always pair this way? Yes. So in the sky, in the cosmos, the stars of Pisces are always opposite that of Virgo, and the stars of Cancer are always opposite that of Capricorn, and the stars of Scorpio are always opposite that of Taurus. And so in the South Indian chart, the signs are always in this same place. This is from our perspective on Earth, this is where they're organized. And I'll say more about that when we go back to our other chart, because it's a little easier to understand, I think. But yes, they're always paired this way. and so there's this simplification available. Okay, so so we now have Venus and Mars, who are opposite each other, and there's a very famous book about this, isn't there? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and this really tells us, okay, Mars and Venus are in the Mars is the one who gives us courage and strength. Venus is the one who allows us to enjoy beauty and pleasure and sort of the arts. And these two planets have a lot to do with sort of our everyday life and this the more mundane existence. And they're the two closest planets to us, right? Like Mars is just a little bit closer to the sun, Venus just a little bit further away, and they're the ones closest to Earth. They're sort of like, as opposed to sun and moon, which are sort of like parental figures, and Venus and Mars are more like brother sister sort of vibe for humans. And so that's this dance where, okay, sun and moon are the archetypal masculine and feminine, but there's, and we don't need to assign genders to Mars and Venus, but Mars is that warrior who's willing to do what is necessary to survive, who's willing to fight to survive another day, and doesn't care if it's fun or comfortable or anything. It's just like, cool, what do we have to do to live? And let's cultivate the strength to protect our life and the courage to go out and destroy that which threatens us, destroy that which makes us weak. Venus on the sort of other side of that has no such receive and give a massage and to eat delicious food and to enjoy art and music, and is this sort of like very sensual, whereas Mars almost doesn't care about pleasure and more about like, Mars is a very physical planet, but it's more this like, Mars like enjoys doing push-ups and like that feeling of, I don't know, if you work out really hard and it hurts, but it hurts so good is sort of Mars qualities. Whereas Venus is more about like sex and food and that sort of like pleasurable pleasure and that whole realm of things. So does that pair of opposites make sense there? So those are our three sort of pairs of opposites that get us through the whole zodiac, right? The parents and the judge, the old man. It's really like Saturn is the name for Saturn is Chronos, as in like chronology, as in like time, right? So Saturn really is old man time. And so we've got the part of this sun and moon and Saturn dichotomy is the sun and moon are the creative forces, mom and dad getting together and having a baby. And it's just like, oh, life, let's create. And it's sort of like life versus time. And Saturn's like, okay, you can create, but you've got, 90 or 100 years at most, and let's start the clock now. And sort of that limiting factor. So it's just like creative generation, and then the limitation on it is that dichotomy. We then have the head and the heart, the intellect versus the wisdom with Mercury and Jupiter. And then we've got sort of pleasure and survival with Venus and Mars. It's like, first we need to be strong enough to protect the town from the invading army. That's Mars. And then once we're safe and protected, then we can do art and make music and dance. So that's sort of like our that's the simplest consolidation of the whole zodiac that I can come up with. And I wonder, tell me something about that. Does that make sense? Have you ever heard that described that way before? Did anything jump out at you as ringing a bell? Tell me.
I feel like I definitely heard of like Venus and Mars as opposite, like you referenced that book, and the sun and the moon. So what was more new and interesting for me was like Mercury versus Jupiter, the conversation of intellect versus wisdom, because I don't think that comes up as much.
Yeah.
And I liked hearing about it.
Yeah, great. Let's look at, let's go back to this other chart. Because we can get a whole other. Here we go. Yeah, so let's look at this again. And so again, this is the same thing we were just looking at, just twisted back the way that it's supposed to go. Yeah. So just to reorient ourselves, here's Leo over here, paired with Aquarius, and then here's Cancer paired with Capricorn. And so this is our reorientation of the zodiac. And so in the, again, this is the regular structure of a South Indian Jyotish chart, and the signs will always be in these locations, right? So Aries is always in this sort of top left center box. Pisces is always in this upper left corner. Gemini always in this upper right corner. And so the signs in this structure are always where they are. And then the planets move through them. And depending on your rising sign, the moment you were born, the sign that was rising on the eastern horizon, that determines the houses. So just to use myself as an example, I was born, I'm Taurus rising. So that becomes my first house, which makes Gemini my second house, Cancer 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? And so that will change for each individual. And that's why a birth time is one of the reasons a birth time is so important to get precise, is that, you know, a couple of minutes can make the difference between Pisces or Aries rising. And depending on whether your Pisces or house or Libra in the 7th house. And though that can make a huge difference about you know, what sort of partner you're attracted to, for example. So I want to run through so we did the 3 pairs, right, of you know, parents and the grandparent. We've got the head and the heart, and then we've got the warrior and the lover, right? These are our 3 pairs. The next sort of expansion of that information is the 6 pairs, where we can look at each of the signs as the opposite of the one exactly across it in the zodiac. And so let's start. My lines are not super precise, but that's okay. Let's start with these pairs right here with Mars and Venus. So, okay, we've got Aries and Libra as the first pair of signs, and Aries is considered the natural first house. In both Western and Vedic traditions, we consider Aries the place where we sort of burst into life, and there's this spontaneous, combustive quality to it, where it's like, I'm here. And so fire sign and rajas. So right, we need a certain measure of rajas to spark us into activity. Because if we think of Pisces as sort of like the spiritual realm, this is the natural 12th house. We're sort of in between lives. We haven't, it's after death and before birth, and we're just living in this sattvic state, just pure beingness, and we're just sort of afloat and you know, living this mystical, poetic, magical sattvic realm. And then the soul's like, hey, we need to get to work, we need to go take some action. And so Mars fires us up some rajas, and we sort of explode into life. And one of the key words with Aries is individuality. There's this, like, because again, we're being born, it's like, yeah, I am here, I am. And there's this self-directed quality. And that concept of directionality is really important with Aries. The opposite of that is Libra. And Libra is symbolized by the balanced scales, right? And Libra is all about relationship, partnership, equal exchange. And so this sort of shows us, again, the value of understanding the zodiac in this way is that each sign has medicine for its opposite. So Aries, which can be very individualistic and directional and selfish in a way, it's sort of like impulsively selfish. We're like, I want that, and I go for it without sort of thinking twice. There's this impulsive, this explosive quality to Aries. And so which can be, again, it's a beautiful quality. It's amazing in so many ways. It's a very powerful expression of life. And sometimes we want to mitigate that. And so Libra, this focus on the other person as equal, and the other person's wants, needs, feelings, not above or below, not preferenced or discriminated against, but strictly equal. And so that requires this negotiation and this sort of back and forth that Libra loves. Libra loves to be in relationship, in conversation, and sort of always working towards that happy medium, always trying to get those scales balanced just right. And so that's one of the beautiful qualities of Libra. And the shadow side of Libra is that they're very often negotiating with themselves, right? And they are so eager to get the scales balanced that they'll keep giving and giving and giving and get taken advantage of. And so in that case, there's medicine for Libra in Aries, where it's like, hey, be a little more selfish. Like, see what you want and go for it. Don't wait for somebody else to partner with you. Don't, like, go for it. Have that initiative, right? And that confidence and sort of the enlightened selfishness of like, hey, what I want is valid, and I'm gonna take action to go get it and ask for forgiveness instead of permission, right? So this is the Aries and Libra medicine for each other.
Dave, does that relationship with regards to the medicine also work with Venus and Mars as opposed to just the Aries and the Libra? Does it work with that relationship too?
Yes. Yeah. So everything we said. So okay. So Aries is ruled by Mars, and Libra is ruled by Venus. So this is one expression of that Mars Venus dynamic. And so Aries is the masculine expression of Mars, and Libra is the masculine expression of Venus. So it's the sort of the outgoing, interactive quality of both these planets that are negotiating with each other and in relationship and pushing and pulling against each other. So Venus, that part of us that wants to experience beauty and pleasure in its masculine form, is outgoing and trying to connect with others and experience that beauty through being in relationship with others. And Mars, that warrior quality in Aries, is that outgoing, like, yeah, I'm gonna go conquer new territory and accomplish things, and there's this ambition. And so yeah, that's one expression of the Mars Venus dynamic. It's a great Great observation, Graham.
Thank you.
And then expression of that dynamic connects with Scorpio. And so Taurus is the feminine expression of Venus, and Scorpio is the feminine expression of Mars. And so Taurus is a fixed earth sign, the most stable, sturdy, resilient, rock-like sign of the zodiac. And all those words also connect to stagnation, stuckness, stubborn, right? That reliability and resilience can also be being stuck in a rut, and stagnation and trapped in its own stability. So Scorpio, on the other hand, ruled by Mars, that feminine expression of Mars is the emotional warrior. It takes that courage and sort of battle readiness of Mars and internalizes it and goes into the depths of the psyche and the emotional body to uncover what's really going on. And Scorpio gets a bad rap sometimes as being like dramatic or like dangerous in a way. Scorpios sort of stereotypically are like into sort of like kinky sex, for example. It's the sort of thing where like, let's read the tarot deck and do a fire ceremony inside a pentagram and then have weird sex is sort of like a stereotypical Scorpio thing, right? And but all of that comes from this motivation of getting to the unseen power, getting to what is alive beneath the surface and exploring the shadow realm because there's treasure down there, and the courage to go to these hidden places and come back with something of value. And so this is Scorpio's medicine for Taurus, because Taurus is the type who is likely to Taurus is, of all the signs, is less likely to actively they're likely to feel things really deep. You say to your Taurus friend like, "Oh, I'm so sorry you got divorced," and be like, "It's fine, whatever, nothing's changed. I'm the same as I always have been." And it's like, yeah, but there's something deeper going on there. And so Scorpio helps them have the courage to like break through that rock-like surface and go mining for the deeper gems, and that courage to, because emotional excavation is not immediately pleasurable, but it feels way better when you've cleared out the stuck, stagnant emotions, and then you can actually enjoy things. And so Taurus needs that support. Whereas Taurus acts as solid land for Scorpio to return to. So if we think of Scorpio as like scuba diving to a shipwreck at the bottom of the ocean that has some buried treasure in it, Taurus is the beach and solid land. So after going on this dangerous adventure, Scorpio can get back to solid. Okay, I can breathe, I can relax, I can sort of stabilize, and it's this solid reference point to which Scorpio can return after it's gone on these sort of ambitious missions to unearth the scary stuff hidden beneath the surface.
Hey, Dave.
Okay. Yeah.
Just as a sort of general rule of thumb then, should we be looking at our opposite sign to try and incorporate those characteristics into our day-to-day? Or in terms of the balance, for instance, like Libra and Aries, or Taurus and Scorpio, if you are naturally a Libra, would your balance typically go that way, in which case look towards Aries, or can it go the other way as well, naturally?
It's a great question, and so I'm in general agreement that okay, if you are identifying some significant Libra qualities in your way, in your psyche, in your outward action, and again, everybody has all 12 signs in their chart, right? This is another sort of layer of, okay, so everything has sattva, rajas, and tamas. Everything has all 5 elements. Everything has all 12 signs in their chart. So it's this sort of invitation for self-inquiry about, okay, which of the signs is most predominant? And of course, we can look in your chart and see what that's likely to be. But just to use your example, yeah, if you're noticing, oh, I'm super Libra and always negotiating and thinking of the other person, even likely like before I think of myself, if not equally, then yeah, there's great medicine to be found in, oh, okay, what would, at least as a thought experiment, what would an Aries do in this situation? Well, they wouldn't ask permission. They would just, ram their, Aries is the ram, and they would just bang their head against this thing they want and go charging after it. And so to at least incorporate that, like, okay, as the sort of counterbalancing factor, because if we get too far on one end of the spectrum, we get out of balance. Just like if we get too overheated, we want to introduce some cooling elements and rebalance the scales, right? If we get too mobile and active, we want to introduce some stability and solidity. And so that's definitely the purpose of understanding the zodiac in this way. Yeah. Thank you. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely. That's great. Thanks, Dave. So you would go to your opposite before going to your second house, before your third house, before your fourth house.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it depends on particularly which area of life we're talking about, because just so for example, if you are Libra rising, then your second house is Scorpio. Second house has to do with like wealth and nourishment. And so if you're having money problems or food issues, then we do want to go to your second house. And from your second house, then we can look at, okay, well, the second house is Scorpio, and maybe I'm having scorpionic issues. And then we can go to the opposite. And so then Taurus up here is your 8th house, but it's in this 7th house relationship, this opposite relationship with Scorpio. And so whatever the particular issue is, then we can look at this play of opposites to see what is most relevant.
That's really interesting. Thanks very much, Dave. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just keep cruising around the zodiac here. Gemini and Sagittarius. I feel like I talk about this axis a lot, because down here is the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And so when we look from our perspective on Earth, I need a different color. We are these little humans on Earth. And when we look towards Sagittarius, and really it's like right in this zone here, right between Sagittarius and Scorpio, we're looking towards the center of the Milky Way galaxy. That means that when we look in this direction, we're looking out into deep space and sort of the infinite cosmos, out into the vast mystery. And so for me, that is the perfect way to understand the qualities of these two signs, where Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, right? Wisdom. The Sanskrit name for Jupiter is Guru, the guru, right? The teacher, the source of knowledge, the source of wisdom. And so Sagittarius is about this sort of traditional religion and sort of classical teachings and teachers and this sort of religions, the church, and the same way that all of the information that arrives to us here in our little solar system out on the edge of the Milky Way, right? If you've ever seen NASA photograph of the Milky Way galaxy, Earth, our solar system is like out here on the outer edge, and there's all this action swirling out to us from the center. So when we look back towards the center, it's like, okay, that's the source. That's the source from which radiates all the intelligence, all the information that arrives to us. So that's Sagittarius. And so Sagittarius, yeah, tends to be traditional and like to follow the rules and study scripture, and is less likely to speculate, right? It's like, well, if you ask them a spiritual question, they'll say, well, you know, this text says this, and my teacher told me this, and so this is the truth. And that is a very valuable and important source of wisdom and knowledge. And if it goes too far, gets imbalanced, it can be fundamentalism. It can be like, well, my teacher told me this, and therefore that's the way it is, and you can't show me any information that contradicts that, because I have this faith, and this is the way it always has been, and this is the oldest book in the world, and you know, the Bible says that the earth was created 5,000 years ago, and so that's a true fact, regardless of what evidence you can show me to the contrary, right? So Sagittarius, when it gets out of balance, tends to that sort of fundamentalist perspective. The medicine for which is in this more exploratory realm of Gemini. It was like, cool, give me new information. What's the new data? Let's collect as much data as possible and analyze it and look at all the details and go. Again, Gemini, as the masculine expression of Mercury, is outgoing, questioning, curious, not making any judgments about, oh, this is good information, this is bad information. It's just give me all of the information, which again is the antidote to fundamentalism, right? Which was like, cool, like, I'm open to all the ideas. Tell me what you got, you know, tell me something new, tell me something interesting. This is the key phrase for Gemini. Isn't that interesting? Now, of course, that can get out of balance when we're not using our discernment, when we're not checking our information against that sort of core truth, our core values. And that's where Sagittarius offers medicine for Gemini, where it's like, okay, cool, go out and explore, be open to new data, but have that sort of solid core, that guru, the heavy, the true teachings against which we can compare, right? So we don't want to get too fundamentalist, so we go exploring for new information. We don't want to just accept or privilege any random data, and so we check it against our core values and our what we consider to be that capital T truth, right? So that's that pair, the one of the expressions of Mercury and Jupiter. So let's go to the other expression of Mercury and Jupiter, which is this axis here, which is Virgo to Pisces. This is Gemini and Sagittarius was the masculine axis of that pair, and so Virgo Pisces is the feminine axis. And so Virgo loves details. Virgo is our engineer, who's making spreadsheets and doing specific mathematical calculations so that the bridge is stable and will last 1,000 years, and is organizing all that information. Virgo loves to organize it and make sure that it's accurate and precise, and is asking really detailed questions, getting into the nitty-gritty to make sure that the structure, the underlying structures are solid. Virgo is an earth sign, and really wants the details to be correct and accurate. And I am just so grateful for our Virgo people, because they are the type who they see, because they're organizing all the information, they tend to see patterns and think in these sort of structural patterns that often go unnoticed. So I feel like cities have sewers because of Virgo people, and the trains run on time to the extent that they do because of Virgo people. And it's like Virgo responsibility for these things, not because they want to. I am the one who can see that pattern and the one who can analyze the data enough to figure it out. So I guess you idiots need me to, design a system to organize your whole lives for you. And it's true, we do. We really need our Virgos to analyze our data. Now, the sort of extreme end of that is this myopia, right? We get so focused on the tiny little details, we forget about the bigger picture. And so that's, we can get so stressed about my problems and my issues and trying to figure stuff out that we really need Pisces to help us expand and get that bigger picture, that faith-based, oh, okay, let's just float in the oneness of all existence, and none of it is really my responsibility because God is going to take care of it. And then again, that Jupiter sort of faith and wisdom and that sort of expanded idea of inspiration, like, oh, okay, I don't have to control this. I can just float with the tide and it'll carry me where I need to go. And so that's that bigger picture, that zoomed out, like, and so Pisces has this more poetic, abstract, metaphysical conception of how things work, and yeah, this more metaphorical, it's less about Pisces is not the engineer but the imagineer, right? Pisces is all about the imagination and this very like spiritual approach, where it can be infuriating to Virgo because Virgo is like, okay, well, we need to make a plan. And if we want to manifest this, then we have to take, here's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20. And whereas Pisces is like, oh yeah, it's going to work itself out. It's going to be just fine, right? And it's this like poetic, mystical approach. And so Pisces really needs Virgo to be like, okay, yeah, and you're going to need to bring your wallet and your phone with you and make sure you have the address to know where you're going. Whereas Pisces is like, oh, I know about where it is. I'll just drive until I get there, right? Whereas Virgo's like, okay, let's plug it into Google Maps and we'll arrive. It's going to take us 36 minutes to get there, and the traffic is like, so it's this conversation again between sort of the heart-based faith and everything's beautiful and let's just go with the flow, versus like, okay, and we need to take responsibility and organize the information appropriately so we can accomplish what we want to in a reliable way. And so you can see how these two have a lot of medicine for each other, right? Virgo needs that sense of, hey, like, you can do your best to control it, and ultimately it's all in Spirit's hands, and nothing is going to go totally to plan, and you have to be able to trust it and go with the flow, the faith of Pisces. And Pisces really needs help with like, okay, do you have your wallet, phone, and keys? And you have this beautiful vision of what's possible, and what's the plan? So yeah, I live in this realm. I personally know a lot about this realm. Anybody else get that? Yeah. Okay. So let's now go to our last two pairs, and let's start with Leo and Aquarius. So these two, Leo is the king, Aquarius is Leo is the leader, and Aquarius is the people, the followers, the populace. And this is such an interesting dynamic where Leo is the sort of the sovereign, the monarch, the one, there's one sun at the center of the solar system, and the sun radiates all the power that goes out through the solar system. Aquarius, on the other hand, is all the people. There's always this tension between these two, because really the leader only has the power of the leader is dependent on the people bestowing power, right, and bestowing permission to lead them on some level. And so Leo tends to get into this sort of the tendency is this egocentric, where like, I am the all-powerful being and everybody follow me. And that, again, we need our Leos. We need strong leadership. We need these people with vision, right? The light of the sun allows us to see clearly. And the sun is the center of gravity around which the whole solar system is organized. So we need good leadership. We're seeing what's happening in the world right now with incompetent leadership. I mean, just to say, I don't even want to say his name, but fearless leader in the United States is Leo rising. He is a Leo, right? And you can see how he is the center of gravity. Everything orbits around him, doesn't it? But it's this distorted way. He was born on an eclipse. Like he's got a whole deal that we don't need to go into. So there's this medicine for the we need strong leadership, but it's lonely being king, and there's only one king, right? There's one monarch, and so the counterbalancing energy to that is everyone, is the whole populace, this sort of democratic populist energy of what is greatest good for the greatest number is the motivation of Aquarius. Equal distribution of resources, not all hoarded in the, I think of Scrooge McDuck who goes swimming in his gold money, right? No, let's distribute that equally. Everybody in the kingdom gets bread. Everybody has a house to live in. So this is Aquarius, and Aquarius is a fixed air sign, and this has to do with sort of social agreements, right? And the thing that comes to mind always is money, right? Or like, especially fiat currency is a faith-based thing. The thing that gives it value is trust. Is sort of the unwritten agreement that we will exchange this, and we'll agree that $20 is worth $20, and $20 is worth about whatever we're willing to, whatever the market price says it is. And so this is the invisible hand of the market, right? Where it's at least the way it's theoretically supposed to work is these invisible agreements that organize our society. That's fixed air, the invisible structures that organize us. And so if there's a loss of faith or a change in those invisible agreements, then the leader, the king distributes gold coins with his face on it, right? But if the populace gets rowdy and decides that we don't like that king anymore, then all that gold is going to get melted down back into one thing and reprinted with a different leader on it potentially, right? So this is this push and pull between the king and the people, the leader, the monarch, and the populace. Okay, that's that axis. Is that clear? That's a pretty potent one. I mean, these are all obviously like super powerful, right? These archetypes that live through us and show up in the world. Okay, and our last pair here is Cancer and Capricorn. Cancer, ruled by the moon, the archetypal mother. The motivation for Cancer is unconditional love, is this desire to be enmeshed and connected, and the sort of the field of unconditional love that binds us all, where even when a child is grown and living on the other side of the world, the mother still feels connected through the field of love. And so this is an incredible source of power as well as vulnerability, right? We all know the story of the mom who can like lift the car to save her child. Incredible power because of her fierce love. But then we also know the sort of like helicopter mom who can't let go, right? Is sort of overbearing and smothering, which is sort of this excess entanglement, right? It's like too much. And there's also, and that happens because of the vulnerability of unconditional love, where the mother loves the child so much, and it's literally a piece of her body that is now outside of her, running around, climbing trees, running into traffic, like in danger, and she's not in control of it. but it's still a part of her that's out there, and that's incredibly vulnerable. And so this is the dichotomy of Cancer. And so it can lead to this sort of emotional entanglement, whereas like the beautiful part is the connection, that field of love that we can just bask in. We all know, like, when we're surrounded by people that we love unconditionally, family, mom, grandma, it's just like we can just bask in it, right? And it's so nourishing. And the shadow side of that is this sort of like it's like gossip and sort of like stirring up drama. The people who have the tendency to create drama just so they can feel connected, right? Just so they can be in relation, just so I can feel like we're having interaction. I'll do anything to create drama just so you have to reach out to me or whatever, right? On the medicine for that is Capricorn's sort of cold-hearted calculations. Capricorn is the merchant of the zodiac and wants to make a plan and a budget, and isn't making emotional judgments. It's sort of running the score sheet, right? Like, okay, we brought in this much this month, and so we can afford to spend this. And it's this very rational approach, and that can, and so, okay, that has medicine for the part of you that's like emotionally entangled. It's like, well, this isn't accomplishing anything. It's none of my business, and there's no net gain from me interfering in this situation, and I feel this feeling, but it's not worth it. And profit loss statement, nope, not worth it, so I'm going to go over here, right? And so that sort of rational thinking can be of great benefit to Cancer, and it can come off as quite cold-hearted, right? And the sort of like everything's a calculation, right? And everything is well, how much does this benefit me, and can I afford to give this energy expenditure, and that sort of thing. Whereas like mothers are generally like, well, can I afford to love my child in this way? Like, yeah, like there's no doubt, like you'll do anything to make it happen. And so that's then Cancer's medicine for Capricorn is this counterbalancing, like, hey, like we don't need to do any math to know that I'm going to do everything I possibly can to support you and love you. So that's the zodiac in 6 pairs. And so the suggestion is, if ever you're looking at a chart or talking to someone about their sign, and maybe you forget what the qualities of Scorpio are, you can think about, but maybe you can remember what Taurus is all about, and then that they're opposite, and you can, based on what Taurus is, you then know something about Scorpio, right? And so to think of the zodiac in these paired opposites is both a source of inspiration and sort of inherent suggestions about, whoa, I'm getting super egotistical over here and taking center stage obsessively. What do I need to do? Oh, let's think of what's the greatest good for the greatest number, and how can I distribute resources equally and stop hoarding them, right? And that can be literal or metaphorical. And we, oh, I'm getting really stressed about all the details I'm responsible for. Okay, let's zoom out and remember the bigger picture, and have faith that, okay, this is going to go fine. It's, let go and let God. And then from that perspective, I can reapproach these details and do the best I can to organize the information, right? Does that make sense? Is that okay?
It's making so much sense. And for me, it's a new understanding to think of the signs in terms of their opposites, which it's like blowing my mind that I hadn't done that before, because that is so Ayurveda, to understand something and then to find its medicine in the opposite qualities. And I think initially, I knew about my sign, and I know my sign's strengths and my sign's challenges. And so in those moments where I'm having challenges, I'm like, well, come on, just do your sign's strengths. But really, it's an opportunity to actually look to the strengths of the opposite sign for inspiration. Like, that is incredible. It's like really making sense to me, and I'm really appreciating that like balancing perspective.
Yeah, and you're totally right. Like the medicine of opposites is Ayurveda, right? It is the science of opposites, and we talked about the 3 gunas, but Ayurveda is very much based on the 20 gunas, or the Gurvadi guna, the 10 pairs of opposites. And so this is where we're talking about like hot and cold, moist and dry, rough and smooth, and these are the adjectives that we use in Ayurveda to describe any condition, any experience. And so if somebody comes in complaining of a head cold, it's like, okay, well, it sounds like you're feeling dense and heavy and cold and stagnant, as opposed to light, hot, mobile, right? And so where between on this spectrum of paired opposites, which side are you on? And so if we're all the way on the side of dense, cold, heavy, then let's introduce some light, warm, mobile qualities, and we've rebalanced ourselves. So that's Ayurveda. That's the fundamental approach to treatment and healing in Ayurveda. And we can do the same thing in Jyotish. So if somebody's got a whole bunch of action going on in one side of their chart, or one particular sign is, having a rough transit or something like that, we can, okay, we want to support that energy to have its highest expression possible, but also like what's the counterbalancing quality, and how can we harmonize? So yeah, that's the thing.
I think this is also a good time to say, if you don't already know, and if you're not live with us, David meets with clients personally to discuss their charts. So if you're watching this now and you're thinking, okay, I want to understand even more about how this relates to me, and I want support in doing that, David is your guy. I mean, you've seen him make these beautiful connections, and he can do that on an individual basis. David, do you want to tell us just what else you have going on before we close? I don't know if there's anything else you want to close out with, but if you want to share some upcoming events or opportunities with this group here, we'd love to hear what's coming up for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Geez, there's definitely things happening. And so, yeah, first of all, just to say thank you for your time and attention. Thank you to Molly and Sierra of Cultivate Balance for hosting, as always. Thank you to those of you live on the call here for being here, your attention and your questions and participation. Yeah, I think, let's see, what day did I schedule that? October 24th is a Saturday. And going to do a free web class where we're going to do some case studies around the upcoming election in the United States. We will look at, our current president's chart. We'll look at the chart of the moment of the election, and we'll sort of, I'm not going to make any predictions. That's not the kind of thing that I'm into, but just want to sort of talk through what are the prevailing energies, what's the atmosphere of this particular moment in time, and these particular actors playing this role in this scene in the play is what we're going to look at. So you can go to my website, vedadave.com. There's a link right on the homepage to sign up for that. Again, totally free. And there's upcoming events there as well. Always encouraging you to sign up for the New Moon newsletter. I send 2 emails a month on the new moon and the full moon, just doing updates, announcements, and astrological analysis, important dates to keep track of. And that's the best way to stay up to date with all things Veda Dave.
And if you're not on either of our newsletters and you want to be, you can always sign up on our websites, or you can just pop your emails into the chat and we will go ahead and add you so you get those communications. Yeah.
And before we close out here, Graham, please speak your questions. Let's do it.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just finally, just coming back to the signs, there seems to be, if we're doing our own research online in interim, there is a heck of a lot of information out there. It's completely saturated with sort of stuff. And I'm just wondering, there's quite a lot of it I find does conflict with each other out there. I'm just wondering, do you have any that you would vouch for in terms of sources to do our own research on signs, etc., just everything you're talking about?
On the signs, is that what you're asking for? It's a little bit hard to hear you.
The horoscopes and all that sort of stuff, and the zodiac in general, really, there seems to be a lot of conflicting stuff, because off the back of some of the stuff I've researched with you, there are odd bits here and there that don't necessarily tie in, but it's not from particularly great sources, if that makes sense. It's a bit of a minefield to the novice, and I'm just wondering if there's any particular decent ones that you would suggest keeping an eye on.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question, and it is a total minefield, and there is a full spectrum. Astrology is skyrocketing in popularity right now. I think the last couple of years, there's incredible, huge amounts of venture capital money flowing into astrology apps, and apparently the millennials are rejecting traditional religion and looking to astrology, and so there's a full spectrum from really flimsy data to people who are really, really doing it. So one of the top people I would recommend is a guy named Simon Mcconaughey, and I'll type his name into the chat here. Okay, to everyone, his name is Simon Mcconaughey, and you can go to spirittype.com. And he's got a great YouTube channel full of free classes. He's got tens of hours of free classes, introductory level stuff where he's going over these very basic concepts. And he's an incredible teacher. He's one of my favorite people. He teaches Sanskrit, he teaches Ayurveda and Jyotish. He used to be associated with the Ayurvedic Institute. He's written multiple books. He's got multiple online courses you can take. Really, really big fan of his. I took his Sanskrit course a bunch of years ago, and then just recently I typed into the YouTube search bar Bitcoin astrology, and his name came up. I was like, oh, my old friend Simon, and so he's got this whole group where every week we spend a couple hours going into and it's not just Bitcoin, but it's looking at cryptocurrencies and the stock market and using astrological techniques to get a sense of what's going on. And so it's fascinating on sort of a socioeconomic level, but also I learned so many techniques from it. But that's one application. But he's got a ton of courses, ton of classes. He would be the person that I would point you to. Yeah. And of course, I'm in the process of developing my own courses. I should say that they're not quite ready yet. But if you have specific information that you want from me, please let me know. I'm creating a sort of intro level. So basically, the goal of this course is for lay people who want to be able to have an intelligent conversation about astrology. You're not training to be an astrologer necessarily, but again, sort of like we do here, some basic vocabulary, the essential concepts, so you can have a conversation, and when somebody says, hey, what's your sign, you can actually say something about it and know what you're talking about, and not just oh, my sun sign is this and I don't know what that means. Be like, okay, no, this is my moon and I feel this, and to actually be able to share something about it, and to also look at transits, look at a chart oh, this full moon is coming up, this eclipse is coming up, and actually have some experience of it to reflect on what you're feeling in your body. So that's one course. There's another course about time management. Really, this is the first priority for me, is to because with Vedic astrology really is the science of time. And Ayurveda also has some very specific information about how to organize your day in a skillful way, right? It doesn't make sense to go to the church to pray when it's closed, right? It doesn't make any sense to go to the grocery store at midnight when there's nobody there, right? You can do it, but the results are not going to be favorable. And so with astrology and Ayurveda, we can find there are these natural biorhythms to which we can attune and let our animal bodies flow in harmony with the cosmos. And there's a lot of intelligence, and it's so simple. It's not complicated, but it's just not something that we're taught. And so to lay out some of this information and offer some techniques and support and systems around that is another course that I'm developing. So again, all in development right now. So please reach out. I'm eager for feedback, and I'm making these classes right now. So now's the time to sort of nudge me in one direction or another if there's something specific that you want to learn.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. And it seems like we'll be together again in a month doing another Cosmic Cultivation conversation. It'll probably be the first Saturday of November, but keep an eye out on either of our websites for more information on that. And definitely keep an eye out for, what did you say, October 24th? That sounds like
October 24th.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, totally. And having plugged myself so thoroughly, I would also point you right back to cultivatebalance.com. They have a bunch of courses ready, and amazing Ayurveda knowledge, super accessible, sort of like simple but not easy techniques that are like, okay, what can I do that's most impactful today? Sort of like, what's the simplest, sort of maximum impact for least effort? I love what they're doing. They have one of the best dosha quizzes out there. If you want to figure out what your Ayurvedic constitution is, really, really fun. So yeah, point you right back to Cultivate Balance as well.
A big part of our philosophy with Cultivate Balance is around the idea of taking care of ourselves so that we can take care of our families, our communities, and the planet. So all of the courses that we do from the Ayurvedic lens are really about how can you serve yourself so that you can really serve others. I'm working on a course right now on work-life balance, which is really about deepening your personal practices so that you can connect more with your purpose and with others, and that will be launching in January. So there's so much good stuff happening in this crazy world, I promise. And we hope to see you all again very soon. Thank you so much, David. I'm always so inspired to hear your ability to like structure these things in your mind and give such beautiful, tangible examples. It really supports my learning, and I'm so grateful to bring this to our Cultivate Balance community in addition to your community.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you all for being here. I hope it, may it be of benefit. And I trust you all to take care of yourselves and take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Sandra. Bye, Graham.
Adeus. Thank you,
Good to see you.
everyone. Thanks, Mali.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.